Alright. How will the stream work? Come on, big money, no whammies. Cool.
Should write a space heater.
I should.
Does anyone remember how to get the link of the stream? So I've got like a server URL, which is totally not the right thing. I thought there was somewhere on here a link that I can copy and share.
What are you using?
Just like YouTube Live.
But for streaming, it's really something else.
Oh, OBS.
Yeah.
You go to YouTube?
Yeah. I think so.
Hey, Rich, do you know how to grab the URL from the live stream?
Yeah. How to do what?
Like to get the URL so I can put the live stream
So do
on
you
announcements.
on Twitch?
It's just your channel, isn't it?
I don't know. I guess so.
Like if I go to embed a live stream, it's just the channel link, I thought.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's see.
What's the meaning of it?
Let's see if I wanted to see my channel. You'll have to excuse me, I'm a complete YouTube noob. I guess my channel, this guy. Yeah, looks like maybe this will have reasonably the right things.
Is it tiny?
No. Nice.
They'll be able to find out one way or another, right? Like if I link from here.
Maybe.
I
I don't see any live badges on those videos.
Possibly.
Yeah, this one is from like last time I did it.
Well, then how did you link it last time?
I don't remember. That was like months ago, man.
Yeah, there's an announcement. That's so
There's something over
I
there.
didn't make noise and you turned it
Oh my god.
They're terrible. Randall does very professionally.
Oh, I have it as private, so maybe setting it to public will help.
Sent out a spam email to like
Schools or something?
students.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so mad. She literally was like, "Oh, I'm looking for work out free pizza order." Literally, 30 minutes after that email, 70 students signed up. Looking for pizza. I'm like, oh my god.
Okay, maybe I will try again.
Oh, literally was like,
Is this student working day? You have a pizza for that?
yeah, well, we're placing the order in today. So, I just need to have numbers, which I don't know our numbers. But I just hope it doesn't turn out what happened last year.
Is this speed networking thing? Should we just set a table and just come to us and we ask the questions?
Yeah, I'll be very organized when you're there, don't worry. But basically, that's what it is. You can eat pizza if you want. The breaks. Students will be flooding me the entire time.
$1,500,000 United States dollars. Compliments dear concerned beneficiary.
Oh.
Exclamation point!
Click the link.
What time is it?
Jerry Dickinson. It's all the money, guys.
Cool. This is like everyone on the squad, save Brad and then Daniel had to do his thing.
Where's Daniel today?
On your wrist.
He had to go sign some stuff with a person and stuff. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna start, I guess. If anyone else wants to come in, they can come in late. That's cool. Cool. So we're gonna talk about Hyperapp, and Hyperapp is the short version, an alternative to React, and it does some pretty cool stuff. So we're gonna talk about that. So yeah, we're just gonna. I just made a little repo, and also amusingly enough, some weird full screen stuff. Anyway, cool. So yeah, alternative to React, based on Elm. Elm is a really cool functional language that I used in my last job, but it's only for sick people who really like Haskell and Lisp and OCaml. So if you're not one of those people, then maybe don't touch Elm. It's really cool though, but that's beside the point. So, well, I guess maybe one quick point. So the reason that you would use Hyperapp over Elm is Elm compiles to JavaScript, and as a result, you're kind of stuck in like an isolated bubble of things that are in Elm. And then to use real JavaScript, you need to use something called ports, which are kind of like event streams where you can send stuff out and get stuff back in. So you send stuff out, JavaScript does like JavaScript-y things with libraries, then it comes back, and then you can do things with Elm from that data. Yeah, so Hyperapp is kind of like an in-between, so it's built directly in JavaScript, so you don't have to worry about a lot of the externals to JavaScript, where you would need to do that in Elm. Yeah, so this is what like an Elm app looks like. So I just wrote this really quick, so there might be some errors in it.
Hyperapp? You said it all now.
Oh, sorry, yes, Hyperapp.
I foresee you might switch back and forth.
Yeah, okay. I'll try my best to be correct. Yeah, so it's pretty simple. It looks a little reduxy, so you've got like an initial state, which could be blown out to whatever you need it to. You've got a set of actions, which can take a value, which currently these two don't. And then that returns a function that takes the state, and then you can modify the previous state and return a new state, so it's immutable. Yeah, there's some neat things you can do here. One thing that I found, and I'm not sure if this is correct, is that you can only pass one thing into your action. So you typically have like an object that's got like a larger payload, or like one value, but as far as I'm aware, you can't do like 2 parameters and have that go through. Not a big deal, but I actually ran into it in one of the apps that I'll be showing you. Yeah, so like it's pretty close. There's some differences, like React would do on-click in camel case, whereas here it's all lowercase. What else would be different?
I have a question. Do you need to have a wrapping element?
That's a good question. So I'm not 100% sure. I suspect so, but maybe not. I didn't experiment with that. That's something we can check out though as we play around. But yeah, like you can do JSX. There's also basically this H up here is what exposes the JSX stuff, just kind of like how React does for a React app. You can also use this like a function. So instead of building out like JSX, if you wanted to go like more JavaScript-y, you could do like H, and the first parameter is the DOM element, so you could do like in a string div, and then the second is your props, and the third is an array of children. So it might be H or it might be H dot something. It's one of the two. I didn't play around with that, but a while ago, Hyperapp used to be just like a wrapper function, which I think was called HyperDOM. And yeah, so that's all it did was kind of let you build React-like component structures using functions. So that's kind of the history of Hyperapp, and then people were like, hey man, this is really cool, maybe we should make it into a big thing. And then I guess the author really liked Elm, so they kind of based things off of Elm. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, there's a few apps we're going to look at, and yeah, well, I'll just skim over very quickly, but a simple list app, a tic-tac-toe app, and a chat app. So yeah, we'll start with the list app, and I'll just cover up the comparison, not that there's really anything to hide there. Yeah, so what I wanted for the list app is a side-by-side React and Hyperscript comparison to see what the main differences were and if there was like any kind of pain points. So it renders a list with a text box at the bottom, and you can enter things into the text box, press enter, and it adds them to the list, and you can do that as much as you want. I didn't look into performance as much, which is maybe another statistic I should have taken into account, but I did this all last night, so life. Yeah, so yeah, it does some stuff. We'll jump into some code. By the way, I have a repo, which I will be posting later, and probably toss it in the description of the video. I guess we'll start with React. So really quick, dependencies, so typical React stuff. We've got some like Babel, a preset for React and React DOM, and then I'm using Webpack. So as trimmed down as I could make it, I kind of wanted this comparison to be as little about like extra fancy features and more about just the two side by side.
Question.
Yep.
Where does I've never used Elm before. Where does Elm play in here?
Oh, so Elm is what inspired Hyperapp. So there's like some history, and you can read up on Elm probably separately because it would be too big to dive into too much.
Sure.
But I guess I can answer your question maybe a little better. So this general setup of having a state and then kind of like an action list and a view as like three distinct pieces is like a very Elmy thing.
Oh, okay, I see. So it's not actually Elm.
Yeah, so yeah, in a general sense, Hyperapp and Elm are completely separate things. They just have common ideas.
But you're not going to see Elm anywhere in your Webpack.
No, I didn't do. That would have been interesting, but it's not a thing that you can read easily if you haven't done like OCaml or Haskell or Lisp.
I have another question.
Yes.
Let's derail this early. Swipe back. If you can answer it like succinctly, it says it's a strongly typed language that guarantees to remove 100% of runtime errors.
Yeah. So as long as you're within the Elm ecosystem, the compiler has a lot of really cool features that lets you detect bugs before they actually get into production. Once you start getting into like interfacing with JavaScript, then that guarantee kind of goes out the window because now the JavaScript can throw a runtime error. But anything that's like contained directly in Elm is guaranteed to not have any runtime errors. Cool. Yeah, so I'll dive into the Webpack config now, just so you guys can see I'm not doing any magic. It's a bare minimum in terms of we got like an entry point, basic output stuff, just using a Babel loader, targeting the web, and then dev server. I'm just doing this stuff. By the way, I will share with you guys my local IP, so anyone in London is stuck just watching on YouTube, but you guys will be able to load up the app and play around with it as well. And everyone except Rich has their laptop, so we're all good. Oh well, yeah, he's got lunch. It's like that. Cool. So basic HTML5 doc. Again, just stripped down. So we just got a body. We've got a root where we're going to mount the app, and we load up our script. And our source code is as trimmed down as I could make it. There might be a few things that we could trim down in terms of like combining a few lines, which may or may not ruin readability. But yeah, so we got a list, and we keep track of our list of items that we've added, and then we also need to keep track of the input text. I guess one thing I could have done is had a non-controlled input in React, which would have maybe saved me a few lines. don't know that's that big of a deal. Yeah, and then got a key down handler, so when you hit enter, we clear our text and then add whatever was in the text to our list of items. And yeah, then we just got some simple renderings. So I've got a wrapping div, which we totally don't need. I'm just gonna bump that out. And we render our list of items, and then at the very end, our last list item is our input box, which yeah, we just manage changes and update our internal text value, and on key down we do a little bit of magic and add it. So we can run this guy. Just below this. I deleted all my node module stuff. I'm pretty sure I did. But anyway, just to let you guys know again, I'm not pulling any weird tricks or anything like that. Not that you'll see anything that's going to be like, whoa, that's not React. But yeah, so that's running, and I got a tab here, which yeah, maybe I'll just toss into our squad channel. So all of the demos are going to use the exact same URL import. Yeah, so that's super tiny. So let's we'll bump that up a little bit. Cool. So we got like an input box, and I can add stuff, and just do that, as much as I want, and it works. Yeah. So let's see. So we got like 45 lines of code-ish, give or take. I'm pretty sure I could trim that down a little bit, but I also didn't want to take any weird shortcuts that make this tough to read. But like everyone agrees, pretty straightforward. Cool. So we're going to jump over to Hyperapp, and we'll check out our differences. Yeah, so like basically looks the same, other than React and React DOM. And then instead of the preset for React, we're just bringing in the React JSX transform. So Hyperapp just uses that. It's pretty simple. On top of that, there's a oh right, I gotta go full path on this. What is that? It's gonna be Hyper and Babel. So the two Babel RCs are exactly the same, other than the preset, and then I just had to do this little switch. So typically transform React JSX looks for React like this, which is how you typically import it. But since Hyper uses H instead, you just gotta let the plugin know to search for H instead. So pretty straightforward. Let's go back. Cool. Yeah, and Webpack config, literally copied it. I don't think I had to do any modification on it whatsoever. And our source code. So this guy looks a little different. Both H and app are just subparts of Hyperapp. We've got our state. So we got our array of items, our string of text. We have two actions. So this is where things start to diverge a little bit. So we have our add item. So that's adding whatever is in our text box, or in this case, in this variable, to the end of the list. And we have set text, which I guess for consistency we can do that. Takes in the value, which is going to be the value we get from our on change event and our state. And then, yeah, so I didn't bring in the spread operator, because otherwise here I'd do like ... state and then just this. But since I want to keep things nice and trim, I've just got to declare both again here. So we've got our items, which we're literally just copying over, and then our text, which is coming from our new value here. Got a view. We don't need that. So our view takes a state and actions. So the state is obviously the current state, and actions are kind of some modified versions of these functions. So what sort of happens is behind the scenes when we build the app down here, these functions get wrapped in such a way that when they're called, it triggers an internal state update. So one thing about this to bring up is that Most of the state code and like logic and handling is handled directly by Hyperapp, and you don't have access to it. So it's kind of like a really locked down version of Redux, which is like kind of good and bad. The good thing is you can't do really weird things, which you could do in Redux or other things. But the bad news is you also can't do really weird things, which maybe you need to do. There's ways around that, which we'll get into with some of the other apps. But yeah, so we got like wrapping div, totally don't need that again. Got our state, so this all looks basically identical, other than instead of on change, I needed to use on input. And on key down is all lowercase. And I inlined this because, as you can see, I don't have a class, so I have to put it somewhere. I could just as easily do like on key down handler or something up here, and then write everything that way. But the nice thing about that is, or doing it here, is I don't need to pass the actions to keep things in scope. So totally not a big deal, but that's just kind of how it is. And yeah, we set up the app and tell it where to mount. So let's do that. Cool. So let that sucker load up. Cool. And so if I refresh this guy, that's interesting. Let's try. Oh, there we go. It's just being weird. Okay, so yeah, everything seems to work pretty identically. Cool. So I don't know. Any questions about these guys? Like obviously React has a little bit more formality to it in terms of like there's a component and there's a much heavier sense of like life cycle methods. Hyperapp also has some life cycle that you can just add into any component. So I believe there's like an on load and on destroy. May not be on, might be on mount or something. It's one of the two, but you can do stuff so when things start rendering, you can hook onto those and do appropriate callbacks. One example they had on their site was having a video player that when it mounts, it automatically plays, and when it unmounts, it stops playing. Yeah.
So you made the comparisons to Redux, so it's a global state manage.
So it's completely tied into the app. So as far as I'm aware, there's no way for me to introspect into like the state beyond like in my view or my actions.
Right. So if you make another component, how do you access it? Like
so
in that component, you'd have access to all state, right? All the state.
Well, so what would happen? So you got your view here, but let's say we want to make a component. We could do. So this is very similar to like the React dummy style component. So you have like thing, and it can take props, and it would return some sort of JSX thing. So we could do do something like that, and we'll bring back our wrapping div so we can pop this in here. Now, honestly, I didn't actually try this, so we're gonna learn something. Cool. So like that should maybe work. Hey, cool. And then if I wanted there to be like a click, maybe it's like props dot on click, and I did like on click equals. Hey, so that's what all the cool kids say. And I'll go back over here, click on that. Yeah, so like very similar to React, and then you could like break out components, obviously much easier. Does that answer your question? Cool.
I have two questions.
All right, ask them.
One is half decent, the other is not.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so in the Hyperapp one, like you're not, in your view, you're not accessing state directly, you're using actions like add item and stuff like that, right?
So we do have our iteration here, so we're doing like state.items.
Right.
But otherwise, yes.
So I'm thinking like on, well, I guess state.text is there. I was thinking about on key down where you do an actions.add item versus on key down in the React when you're, okay. Right, never mind. I forgot. You kind of did it a bit different. You were saying you could have like, you have a handle key down method there, you could have a handle key down function
Yeah, it
there
could be inlined, yeah.
to make them similar. The other thing is my pure stupidity. I'm not very familiar with like the double fat arrow thing that you're doing with in your actions object. So you're passing.
So yeah, that's the same as doing add item. So we'll do it old school way. Would be item.
Yeah.
And be return function state. And then I have like my return letters inside my object. So this is just shorthand. So
yeah. So it's grabbing the second the function inside that gets returned. It's just using the global state or whatever.
Yeah. So
state,
so as part of like kind of the things that get wrapped. So when I do this, this isn't actually the same function as this guy. It's kind of like a weird intermediate function. So it takes your one param and it pipes it into this guy, but then takes the result and sends that through the internal state handling. And that's how it gets like your old state and how it knows what to do with the new state.
Yeah, and then the other, I guess the third question is, in React, you wouldn't modify this dot state directly. You'd use set state, and then what's the? Am I missing?
Yeah. So
like
what you
is
do
basically
is
the equivalent of
yeah,
that.
you would build an action that says I'm going to change the state in this way, and then you'd call that.
Right. Cool.
So in the average app for like Hyperapp or even Elm, you end up with like a lot of actions.
Do you like that?
There's some pros and cons. So one nice thing is it guarantees that every time you want to update, let's say like the text in the state, there's literally only one way to do it, and it's consistent everywhere in the app. So at any point, no matter where I'm in the app, I could do actions.setText, and it'll always set that text.
Right.
So that's kind of cool, and you don't need to pass around like a function that will set the state on a parent or anything crazy like that.
Mm-hmm.
That
I kind of like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what the right wording is for it, but it's like you're.
Yeah, like if you're super strict with yourself, you can basically use this pattern in Redux, but you need to be like super strict because Redux lets you do it whatever way you want. Yeah.
I have a quick question. I think Adam asked this earlier. Are you able to have two root components? Or two root
So yeah, what you're kind of asking is if I didn't have this wrapping div with this UL and thing both render. Yeah. So this is the perfect time to see if everything dies. I see. There we go. Yeah, it totally doesn't like that. So no. We're back. Cool.
I'm going to dip out of the meeting.
Yeah, that's alright. Thanks for joining.
No problem.
You don't need wrapping divs in React anymore either.
Yeah, so there might be a way to do the fragment partial where you have like the empty tags. I don't know. We can look into that later if we want.
I don't think with UL it would be all that.
Yeah, so we just did this app, and so I built some like basic stats, which are probably slightly wrong because I removed a few lines as we were going. But generally speaking, I was able to get away with generally the same code formatting and about 10 lines less in Hyperapp, one less package. Source code was like, I think, reasonably the same in terms of like number of lines and number of bytes. What was very surprising is React was a whopping 1.9 megabytes and Hyperapp was 29 kilobytes. I suspect there's some like extra tree shaking and other settings I could do in Webpack that would maybe trim this number down considerably. Whereas this guy, I don't think you're getting much trimmer than that and still doing all the things you want it to do. But even so, like just with defaults, I was very surprised. I didn't think React was going to be like almost 2 megabytes.
That's just on disk, right? Like, so I wonder if, like, not to discount that, but does that matter, like, over the wire? Like, if most servers do gzipping by default, right? So I'm curious how much that would, like, compress down to.
Yeah, like it definitely wouldn't be that terrible, but it's just like then that's a step that the server needs to do.
Oh yeah, then the client needs to decompress it.
Yeah, so yeah, there's definitely ways to mitigate that between like configs on your server and Webpack. But just with defaults, I was surprised.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, so the second app I wanted to do was Tic-tac-toe. So like up here, I have kind of a list of what I wanted it to do. So we render a board. With each cell on the board, you can click on it. Depending on whose turn it is, that's the letter that shows up. And you can't click over a letter. And after each mouse click, we check to see if that guy's the winner. If so, we update the state to that. And if not, you can keep playing. And then the game can end either when someone gets a full row, full column, or one of the diagonals, or the board is completely filled. And we can start a new game with the conveniently named new game button. So yeah, let's check that out. I didn't do a React version of this because I didn't think we needed more comparison stuff. But generally speaking, same sort of setup. I brought in an extra package that I don't need, so I thought I was going to be doing some weird ID stuff, but totally didn't have to. And yeah, so let's check it out. So we've got a pretty trimmed down state. So we've got a board, which is 9 cells. So up here I just kind of did a mapping just for mental cohesion.
Yeah.
So index 0, 1, 2 is the top row, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so on. And then we've got a constant here, so these are all your lines, so all the rows by index, and then the columns. Just because since I have a flat array, it's a little less easy to just calculate these on the fly. And then the diagonals.
Oh, sorry, those are the possible lines?
Yeah, it's like
Yep.
the win condition. Cool.
Yep. And then I have a row column to index, so the way things are rendered, I go each row and then each column in that row. And then I just need a way to easily math that back. So I know that my width is 3, so I can do row times 3 plus the column, and that should usually work out unless I've given it some really bogus numbers. I got a function, and this just checks the current board and the current player, and goes through every one of these win conditions, which in fact is almost certainly a better name than lines. And then each of those, it checks to see if every cell with that index is the player, and if everyone is, then that means I won. So this will return true if the player is completely across, and this will return true if we come across anyone that is successful. So we got some actions. We only got 2 actions. This could probably be broken up a little better too, but totally not a big deal with the demo. So I want to know if the value that I'm checking for the row and column is valid, so I know it needs to be between 0 and less than 3. So if that fails, then I just return right away. Technically, this probably isn't needed because I control everything pretty well already. But, you know, it's just users, man. And then based on how I want to place something, I figure out what the index in the array is. And then I slice the board. So since I like to do a mutable, this is a little messy to read. But it takes the first half of the board before that index that I'm changing, then injects the current player's letter, and then all the cells afterwards it brings back. So yeah, it's just an easy way of not doing a full-on map. Because otherwise I could do a map and say, if this index is the index that I'm placing on, then swap it for the letter, otherwise use the old value. But that's maybe less efficient. I don't know if slice is actually any better. Yeah, so I got some like conditions to figure out if we're done the game. So if every cell isn't empty, then obviously we can't progress. And if the current placed letter creates a win condition, then we're also done. So in either case, we're done. And then after we place, we want to update to let the next player go. And then get the new copy of the board. And updater is done. And if we had a win condition, then set the current player as the winner. Otherwise, keep it blank. So this is kind of my cheap way of figuring out whether or not it's a cats game as well. So if we're done and we don't have a winner, then it comes cats.
Which is like every fucking. Sorry, YouTube live stream.
Yep. And then we have reset. So this just takes a bunch of blanks and takes my initial state that I have up top and just slams it in as the new state. Nice and easy. Markup was actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Just kind of initially thinking things through. Obviously this isn't optimized and there's things that we could clean up. But yeah, so we've got like our header and our button for a new game. And then we've got kind of a subheader. So we've got a few conditions. If it's not done, then show whoever's the current player. If it is done and we got a winner, then say who won. And if it's done and we don't have a winner, say it's a cats game. And then we get a wrapping div, and we go through each row. And then, so I have some baked-in styles, I guess I can quickly show you through just so you know how I'm doing things. So each row is a flex box. Each cell is an item in that flex box, which initially starts with a full border. And I just kind of did some CSS, so for like on the top row, then we should have a top border, and if we're on the bottom row, we should have bottom, and if we're all the way on the left, don't do a left border, and all the way on the right, so on and so forth. Yeah, there's probably way better ways to do the CSS, but it works. And then we got our old-fashioned mount and script stuff, so pretty straightforward. Yeah, so each one of our rows, we go through each column. And each column's got a little bit of logic here. So first we figure out the cell index and any previous value that's currently in that cell. And then I want an easy boolean to say whether or not we can click. So as long as our current value is empty, so no one's played on that square, and the game isn't done, then we can click. And then I've got some on-click handlers. So if you can click, then call the place action on the row and column. And the state already knows who the current player is, so I didn't need to send that through. And then if you can't click, then just do a no-op. And then I just add some extra style stuff so it's a little more obvious where you can click and where you can't. Cool, so pretty straightforward. Cool. Yeah, so let's go into that sucker. Yeah, the dev server should auto-refresh, and I just have a habit of refreshing too, so if you're sitting there, it might just automatically do the right thing. Cool, so yeah, not too bad, other than the header is blocking some stuff, but I think it has something to do with the full screen live stream thing. Anyway, totally not a big deal. So yeah, we got a current player X. And next, oh yes, okay. So I broke this a little earlier, and we can fix it because we have the technology. I was renaming some stuff, and I missed this guy and this guy. Yeah, so this variable used to be nextBoard, because that's kind of a Reactism. And then I realized that I didn't have board in scope, so it just made sense to just call it board. Cool, so that should resolve that. And I can click and keep going. Cool, X1, everything looks good. Reset that. And if we want to build a cats game, oh shit. Yeah, man. Yeah, I can put some stuff in places. And it's surprisingly hard to come up with a cats game when you want to make a cats game. Cool. So it does all the things we want to do. And I mean, like, considering it plays a game with all the rules, 112 lines isn't too bad at all. Yeah, any questions about how... What's that?
So you're a game developer now.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't like to brag. But, yeah, was there any questions about how this works, or how it doesn't work, or how it could work?
Oh, this is cool.
Cool.
Sure.
So our last app, we're gonna maybe work together depending on. Oh, we got lots of time. Okay, so our last app is gonna be a chat app where we could all potentially sign in and send messages to each other. So I did a little bit of the hard work of doing the Firebase stuff, just because that's kind of out of scope from learning Hyperapp. So I've got a few actions already kind of pre-baked, which I also haven't tested. So we might have some fun with that. And then, yeah, so we got some UI rules that we want to do. So the user should be able to set their name and sign in, and they shouldn't be able to sign in without a name, and they can sign out. And we should always be listening to messages, but we can only send messages when we're signed in.
Good. Firebase tech talk.
Yeah, at some point I'll do a Firebase tech talk. That'll be fun. But, yeah, I don't think we have...
You'll never need a server again.
Yeah, that was my problem with Firebase, is just like, once you learn Firebase, like, you just always want to use it, and unfortunately
And
most
then you
people...
start cramming Firebase into probably bad use cases.
Yep, totally. Yeah, so just to start us off, so Firebase, you can set up some database rules. So I've got some collections. So the rules collection is just like your wrapper. Every Firebase rules has it. And then you can set, so these dot attributes are like kind of Firebase directives. So here I'm saying that anyone can read. And anyone. Firebase has some weird rules about how things work in these rules. So that's why there's no right rule here. So the philosophy I have, and I don't know how true it is only write the rule in the place that you need the rule to be in, because you cannot overwrite a rule once you write it. So if I did like a write false at the root, then no one could write. Ever. Yeah, so we got some stuff. We got these $ signs, so that lets you kind of like set up a variable. So if you have a collection of items, in Firebase, you can fake arrays, but yeah, that's not really the way to do it. They have a way of like pushing items to a collection that's like ordered but also hashed. Yeah, so we got write. So auth is like a thing Firebase provides. So we're saying we've got auth, and the user ID is the same as UID that is writing. So when we create a user, only that user can update their name. And we're validating that the data in this key is going to be a string, which is going to be the name of the user. And we got messages. So pretty similar setup in terms of having an MID instead of a UID, because it is a message. And yeah, so you can write as long as you're authenticated and this message ID doesn't exist. So basically you can't write over an old message. We validate that anytime a message is pushed up, it has to have a user ID, it needs to have text, and a created at timestamp. And the user ID needs to be the value of your current user ID. The text needs to be a string, and created at is a like Unix timestamp number. So we're actually going to cheat. Firebase has a way to say, like, instead of you sending the timestamp, you can just say, hey, whatever time the server's in, that's fine. So we don't really have to worry about this guy as much. Yeah, cool. So that's what our data looks like. And yeah, that's just for uploads. And yeah, our package looks surprisingly similar. We've got UUID, which we don't need again. We got Webpack and Webpack dev server, we've got Firebase and Firebase tools. So Firebase is actually the library, and tools is like command line stuff, so I can deploy the app and deploy the database roles, whatever. And the rest of this looks surprisingly similar. Not too bad. And yeah. Oh, I copied this from Tic-tac-toe, so we don't need any of that. Cool. Nice and simple. Yeah, we got some stuff going on here. So you're going to learn a little bit more, so we're going to get ready to expand the brain a little bit. So Firebase, we just got like some config stuff. Yes, this is okay to be public because it would be public on a website anyway. In fact, all this is public information, so that's why I'm not concerned about this live stream. We got a state, so we want to track our user, what the name of that user is, which is going to be us, and all the messages that come through, and what our current message is. We got some stuff here. Some of this is going to be a little scary, so I apologize. So logging in with the name. So another feature of Hyperapp, which I'm pretty sure is a feature, is you can return a state or you can return nothing. One of the two. If you return nothing, it just means the action is kind of like you're hitting some sort of external thing that doesn't necessarily affect the state. One thing I was hoping, but totally doesn't work, is that I could return a promise, and then the promise would internally be resolved, and then the state would update. Because Firebase almost exclusively uses promises. So I was hoping I could do that. I can't. But then I discovered, hey, if I just don't return anything, it seems to be fine. So I think that's the correct thing to do, but I don't know for sure. Yeah, so we got some stuff here. So when we log in, set the name. If there's no name, so not name also is like an empty string or like a null or undefined. Then just return the state, keep everything the way it is. Otherwise, Firebase lets us do an authorize anonymously, and then we can get a user, and then we open up the database, find our user, and create a slot for our user ID, and set it to our name. Yeah. If you have questions about Firebase, I'll answer a few, but I don't want to make this too much about Firebase. I just want to make sure you guys get what's going on here. Cool. And then when we log out, we just need to do a sign out. And it seems like maybe we should be clearing the user here, but maybe there's something else going on that I'll have to show you. We got set off. So we get like an instance of a user, which means we probably want to set that and keep everything else that we've been accumulating. And add message. So we'll get a message in, and we just want to pack it to the end of our list of messages. And this should probably be state.message and not clearing it, because send message should be the thing responsible for clearing. Yeah, so add message is just we get a message in, doesn't matter if it's from us or someone else. And set user is setting our own user, sending the message. So we find our messages collection, and .push will give us a hashed ordered key. And this is the the server's timestamp. And we have our own user ID, and we know what our text is because of it being up here. And in reality, I think this should be basically. So even though the send is asynchronous, we can kind of let that fire off and deal with it later. But what we do want is to clear out our current message, because that's how messaging apps work. All that seems pretty good except for that. And message changed. Oh yeah, so when you update our own text message that we're currently writing, we just kind of pop that in state. So that's nice and easy. Yeah, so we got some stuff. And yeah, so now we got some other magic going on. So when you create an app, it returns an app. And with that app, you have access to the actions that that app exposes. So here, if you remember our set auth, we can actually call it. And down here, we can have a listener for messages. And as soon as we have a message, we can pipe that through. And also, anytime the user's collection changes, we can just update all that as well. So that's what's going on there. Pretty straightforward. Maybe. I heard so was it? Oh, okay. Are things getting scary? You got questions?
It looks like it's scared. Just watching.
I don't understand line 109 down.
Okay. So Firebase basically exposes a bunch of services. So for instance, auth, database.
Right.
There's some other stuff too, some of which is specific to like push state messages for mobile and a few other things. So when we want to access one, there's like .auth or .database. And when you have a database, it is set up so it's kind of like a big JSON file. And to access things in a chain, you have to start with a ref. So that's like a reference, which is either to the root of the document or the first key of a document. So if you remember this guy, we've got like a users collection and a messages collection. So this is saying we want to use the messages collection. And then this is a like kind of a live callback. So I can say on, and there's a few options. So like I can have child added or child removed or value. And I think there's another one that I don't recall. So child added is anytime a new message comes in, this callback gets fired with a snapshot. And a snapshot is like, it's not the data, but it's an object that has the data in it, so you can do things to it.
Sure.
So if you want the value, you just call it the val function.
Yeah.
But you could also get a reference to like a child or a parent object from here as well.
So, okay. So what's the on line 110 then? What is on value?
So the difference between the two is child added will fire one at a time. So it will say like for each message that's new, fire this. Whereas value is saying this entire collection. Anytime the whole collection changes, just get a brand new copy. So the difference is messages trickle in, right? Yeah, people would be adding messages, whereas users, so technically they trickle in, and we could technically do like a child added, but this will also cover when like things are added or removed or like anything.
When you first log in, right?
Yeah, so when you first log in, we write to the user's collection and push our user with the name, and that would trigger everyone else to do this, and they'll just pull the entire list of users locally and be able to do stuff with it. Cool. Yeah, so that's kind of what's going on down here. And this little bit of magic is just because when you get a collection, you get an object back. So the key is like your index, and then the data is inside there. So all I'm doing is going through each key, which is our ID, and just jamming that into a big array with the username and then their ID, since that's a lot more consumable by JavaScript. Yeah, so that's kind of how things are looking, and I'm just gonna internally here go over to Firebase. Google. I can probably bring this up. I'll just need to kind of jump a few pages first, so nothing.
We'll assume that it works.
Yep. We'll be there in just a second. I'll show you the console for Firebase and all that stuff because I need to turn on the setting. Cool. So I've got lots of other stuff there that you guys don't have to care about at all. So yeah, Firebase offers auth, database, file storage, hosting, and functions. We don't care about any of this other than auth and database. you might care about these things for other things, but I'm not using it for hosting right now. So the big one I need to change right now is I need to enable anonymous authentication. So out of the box, you get support for all sorts of things, but we don't care about those. But yeah, it's like if you've had the hellish experience of trying to integrate an OAuth thing, Firebase is like stupid simple. You just enable it over here, and then you can just use a function in the library to sign in.
I did it in the React Native tutorial.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then, yeah, only these domains are allowed to log in. So let's see, we might be able to just add my local IP, and then you guys will be able to log in as well. Let's grab that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that'll work. We'll find out. Oh yeah, probably one site. Just yeah. So I don't know. That might be the wrong thing to do, but we're doing it. And then there's other stuff for like OAuth flow, which we don't care about. Got our database. I just fired in one message just manually, so you can actually like kind of create things on the fly in here. So this is not what the average key looks like for Firebase. It's actually a bigger hash. But yeah, I just want something on there so I could test to make sure that I can read the Firebase data. The rules are here, and you can do some testing if you want to like be sure if you could read or write based on whether or not you're authenticated. Yeah. Anyway, the only thing I really pulled that up for was to do anonymous auth. But yeah, again, if you got more Firebase questions, maybe post talk I can chat about those. Cool. So let's see what we got. Yeah, so like some stuff. Oh, apparently pure dependency. Oh, right, for the TypeScript stuff. Okay, that's not what we need to care about at all. Oh, cool. So we got like some errors and stuff. Yeah, I don't think I fired this up at all. So look like we're maybe missing a comma somewhere up here. Yes. Cool. And so maybe that's gonna be like mostly happy now. Let's see. Oh no, not at all. Oh yeah, I guess we need to actually like. Yeah, we need to actually tell it that this is an object. Like totally not a big deal, but a bit of a deal. And let's see, we got any more things? No, it seems to have compiled.
I didn't see what change you made. What was missing?
Oh, yeah, I missed the opening squiggly bracket here. So fuck that. I'll say. Yeah, so like if I refresh, cool. So that's something where I could just see a really crude version of messages, and you can make this much prettier. So this might actually be easier if I do something like that. And oh shit, we're running out of time. The intro to this took longer than I expected, but that's okay. That's okay. Well, better yet. So do you guys want to keep going past 3, or you got like big workloads? I know we got a fair amount, but
How long do you think it'll take?
I don't know.
Let's just hammer it out.
Yeah, let's see what happens at 3, and then we can go from there. Cool. So we've got like our list of messages, which should be live theoretically.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we need to build an input. So yeah, it's probably going to look something like that. And let's see, this is going to be maybe for username. And this probably goes up and above that. And let's see, we got a value which is going to need to be, we got a name there. And we're going to have an input, which is, take our event, and then call something like actions dot, we'll call it maybe name change, and it's going to take e.target.value, so just whatever's come back from the event, and we probably want a key down, so surprisingly similar to the other input. There we go, and this is going to be something like if c dot which is 13, so that's enter, then prevent default, and probably something like actions dot login. Yeah, it's going to take state and state dot name. Cool. So so maybe we can log in now. So let's see if I press enter here. Nothing seemed to happen, but let's double check. Yes, we got a user. Cool. So it looks like maybe something's happening.
Just log in the action. Also, yeah.
Sorry?
Just log in the name of the action.
I'm pretty sure, but we can always double check. Yep. Yeah, and then, do I actually need this actions there? No. Alright, so the second param, or the second function, second param, you can also pass in actions to get the current list of wrapped actions in your action, which I thought I might have to call it to something, but I didn't actually need to. Because of this handy little function. So Firebase lets you listen to your auth changes as they happen. So we potentially get like a null or a user back, which is handled here. So we've got, not there actually, sorry, here. So we got our auth and users. Yeah, so that'll be updated as needed. Cool, so we know that we probably don't want to be able to change the username once we have auth. So maybe we do a disabled is state.user, and we could do one of these to be explicit. So yeah, so it turns out that we're already signed in because Firebase remembered our auth. So maybe we need a logout button. Yeah, I don't think we need to care about the event and state actions.logout, except spelled way better. Cool. So I logged out all sorts of bad things. Yeah, because I believe the O is capitalized. Testing, man. That's why you need it. Cool, so I logged out. Looks like I can type stuff again, and name change isn't a thing. So yeah, let's see why that is. I probably didn't make it yet. Yeah, okay, so we'll do name changed, which is going to take in our name. Yeah, I'm gonna rename that so it's more consistent with the message change. But don't you die on me. Cool, so let's see, does it work? Looks like it. Except our logout maybe needs to be disabled. But yeah, cool. So I did a login, and it looks like we're mostly good there. And we got our messages, and maybe we want a message. I guess we'll put it up top because that'll be easier than building some sort of like scrolling thing. Cool, so this is going to be the value of state.message, and on change, no, sorry, on input is going to be actions dot message changed, and that's going to be e dot target value, and let's probably something like state.user, so not Boolean. Cool, so if we don't have a user, we can't do it. Totally great accessibility, and I know that Steve would approve. Cool, so yeah, we're in. I guess we probably also want to do a disabled on here, which is going to be something like state.user. So if we don't have a user, then disable our logout. Currently, during this talk, I swallowed a beard here. We're all good now, though. We're all good. Don't want to talk about it. Oh,
Time's up.
That's what happens when you click login.
Shit. Cool, we're back. Yeah, so refresh. Looks like our logout button is disabled because we're not signed in. So sign in as user. Looks like we're logged in, and can we send something? We don't have where. Okay, so we're gonna go with the shitty, cheap UI of hey, press enter. You can tell I'm really trying to rush this out before everyone gets sick and tired of watching me type.
I think enter's the correct thing anyways.
Yeah, for this one it is. So yeah, I think we have a send message. And it looks like we probably want to send a state.message. Now I guess like we could not control this one and just do send e.target.value. Maybe that's the right thing. Totally beyond the point now, but yeah, I mean that should be circular. So refresh, signed in. Yeah, so it looks like we got a new message, and it's just not at all displaying here. So let's try to refresh.
There it is.
So it did show up, and just didn't add properly. So let's see what's going on here. We know that this happened, and because we saw it down there. So if I did the event totally went through, and add message. Took messages and concatenated. But for some reason it didn't re-render, so that's interesting, and I don't know why that is. But maybe that's a problem for another day. Yeah. Oh, you know why? So we need to key things just like in React. I believe there's actually much tighter key requirements in this and React. So React will actually it'll do something and it'll warn you, but it'll still do it. And I think with this, maybe it'll just be like, no, they're totally the same thing. Nope, I was wrong. All right, so yeah, it turns out we know how to break Hyperapp, which is updating from outside React. So there's probably a way to resolve that. I'm just not sure off the top of my head. Yep. But if I find out, maybe I'll post in the front end channel.
Yeah, that's cool.
But,
you want to make a set timeout.
So I did do that actually with Tic-tac-toe. But yeah, just for fun, we could do a set timeout. Yeah. Why not? So after 1 second.
If it's like chat, you don't have to put like actions for it to access like chat.message.
I don't think so.
Just wondering.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. Let's we'll see if we can find it in the docs really quick, and if we can't, then you guys can get out of here.
Probably don't have anything on that.
Their docs.
Yeah, their documentation is actually really terrible.
If you're watching, fucking get it together.
So we got like a window at main, so they were able to do main up there without anything too crazy.
Yeah, looks like
yeah, so I don't know. We can try that differently, but we could also do a add message, and let's do a the user ID, which we'll just say is -1 and a text, which should be maybe I'll actually make it like all dashes, so it'll be really easy for us to spot. And we created at which will just be 0 because technically it doesn't matter anyway. Alright, so we'll save that. This will refresh, and it's going to attempt to add a message, which it did without any problem there. So that's really strange that fails, considering everything looks good to me.
Child added it correct.
Well, let's do a. We'll do one last Hail Mary. I'm just curious, maybe like .val can only be called once or some weird thing like that. I'm pretty sure Firebase has accounted for that, and that's not at all the problem. But cool. So we got it like that. Let's do some like brackets. Nothing happens. Okay, so yeah,
That's good, man.
problem for another day. But it mostly works if you're okay with refreshing your page every few seconds. Yeah, so people in London, thank you for joining. And that's all I got.
Peace. You can get mine.